Is Coach with us? There he is. Coach, good to see you. A belated happy birthday to you, Coach Logan.
Yeah. Well, I try literally not to think about it, and my family is on warning to not buy one single thing for my birthdays. You just get older and older and older, and I try my best to ignore it. And on we go. Hopefully, I can get to another one. It's gotten
until
to that
I bring
point.
it up on the radio. Yeah, it's gotten to that point.
Exactly.
Look, any day above the ground's a good one. So there you go.
Yep. I agree.
Let me ask you. Let me say this. I enjoyed the heck out of your comparison numbers last week that you did on your show. I thought that was fascinating, and it's a real insight into some things that coaches, I guess, look at, and things that you could really dig in on. You had your deduction out of that show. You've had a week to kind of further deduce this. What is your feel of this game? Is this as tight as the pundits would have us believe it's going to be, you think, on Sunday?
Well, I do. And, for the folks that did listen to that expose that I put forth last week, it was deep into the weeds, and it might not really have resonated for radio with a lot of folks, but for the football geeks out there, it was worth a listen. But, as I mentioned last week with you, the coup de grace, the final little piece of information that I provided having to do with the quarterback with the ball in his hand, down by 3 or more, with less than 2 minutes left. And this rabbit hole that I went down went all the way back to 2001.
Oh, wow.
And there were 125 opportunities of what I just described in playoff NFL football. 125 opportunities from 2001 to 2024. And I gave the numbers on all that. And of course, the most stunning, just generally speaking, Tom Brady was 40-something%, Peyton Manning was 37%, Drew Brees didn't have as many opportunities, but he was 3 for 6 at 50%. The overall deal was about 45%, success rate I'm talking about. And so, you come to Patrick Mahomes. When I looked him up, I about fell out of my chair because he was 7 for 7 in his young career. And so you're asking me, who am I picking, or which way do you think this is going to go? Is it really as close as I think the teams are very, very evenly matched. And it's going to come down to a field goal or last play of the game, barring extraordinary turnovers by one team. But if the game's played on a level field and nobody's turning the ball over at a high rate, it's going to come down to the final 2 minutes, which most and a lot of NFL games do. But here's the big question. You say, well, some, which I think is insanity. But anyway, for the people that I know, there are millions of people love to bet on games. Mm-hmm. So the question now becomes, okay, I'm not going to bet against Pat Mahomes. He's 7 for 7. Okay, well, it begs the question, though. He's been 7 for 7 in those scoring opportunities to win a football game on the last drive of the game. But the question it begs for me is, well, if he's 7 for 7, surely he's closer to the one time he's not going to be able to do it.
The law of averages.
Yeah, so now which way do you want to bet? When I bring that question up, you say, well, I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes, but with that little piece of information I just provided you, you telling me he's going to go 8 for 8? Well, there's a million ways to look at it and a lot of arguments to be made on either end of it. But I do believe, if I'm coaching at Philadelphia, the whole key, and this goes against Steve Logan's DNA, but if I had the team that Philadelphia has, then you're going to see a lot of first and second down runs, and try to get Saquon Barkley loose somehow. And if not him, then, the Hurts kid on the read option and the way that they're built. And I just got to believe that, as bad as I hate to say it, because I hate hearing coaches say this, and I hate hearing radio personalities say this, you got to run the football. Well, I always just wanted to score. And, but I do believe that for Philadelphia to come away with this thing, by the end of the day, you may be hoping that, if Philadelphia wins this thing, you're going to be looking at maybe 33 minutes of possession time and productivity out of the run game. And
Yeah.
if that happens, then I think you can mitigate a little bit of Kansas City's explosiveness. But that's long, hard, tedious work to achieve.
If you're and I know you never got in there on the defense, you let your defensive coordinators do their work. You didn't get in there and micromanage the defensive side.
Patrick, let me interject something here.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because people have asked me, and I'm more of the norm when it comes to offensive head coaches. Offensive head coaches rarely micromanage or get involved with the defense. What offensive head coaches normally do is hire a defensive coordinator, and you're hiring the guy because he's an expert. Yeah. And now get the hell out of the way. Pray to God he stops somebody, okay? But the right. Most curious thing of all in my journey, and this is generally true, a defensive head football coach will meddle with offensive coordinators.
Yes.
To the point that the marriage dissolves because of the meddling. And in fact, I read a long article. Ryan Day this year hired Chip Kelly, and so it freed Ryan Day up to wander around the building, and he began to interject himself into Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator's meetings, to the point that Jim Knowles has quit and gone to Penn State. And that was public. And I just, and I'm not, look, they won the national championship. So, and Ryan Day, as I've reported, Ryan Day was my wide receiver coach at Boston College for 2 years. Really a bright young man. I loved Ryan to death, and we had a great time together and collaborated super. But I'm just saying, the instinct, I was stunned to read that article because it was just what I described in reverse. But let me tell you how I met with the defense each week. You want to hear it?
Yeah, I do.
The defense would be in their meeting room. I would walk down the hallway on Sunday night after both units, the offensive coordinator, offensive coaches, and the defensive coaches had watched, the first round of film from noon till Sunday night. Okay? So you got a flavor. You got an idea, right? I would walk down the hall. I would open the door. I wouldn't even go wholly into the room. I would just poke my head into the room. And I would say to my defensive coordinator, how many points do we need to score this week? And I was dead serious. Yeah. And sometimes they would say, I had 2 defense coordinators in the 10 whatever years I was at East Carolina. And sometimes they would say, Coach, let me tell you something. You better crank it up because these guys are really good. Okay. I'd walk back to my office, and that was good information, but it's all the information I needed. Sometimes I would poke my head in, and they'd just say, hey, Coach, just don't turn the ball over. We'll be good. Well, that gave me an idea of how I want to approach this football game. And, of course, I looked at both sides of the ball. I wasn't just blind to it. But anyway, just your short little comment there just triggered all of that, and that's your fault. So there you go.
I know. It is. What I'll ask you is, if you were in a defensive meeting, how do you deal with something like you see with Philadelphia, where you've had Barkley he's healthy and he's had such a productive year, and then you have a quarterback that can really harm you with his legs also? Well,
that's a good question, and here's the normal answer that coaches would give you. You can't take everything away, so take something away. And I would guess that what they're going to do, and let's just, because the way you asked the question, it reeked of the zone read. Okay, well, what are you going to do with that? Well, let's take Barkley out of the game. Okay, anytime there's a mesh in the backfield, We're going to make sure we've got A, B, C gaps taken care of. And we're going to bring the safety down and let him handle Hurts on the perimeter and just deal with it. Deal with it in that fashion. But you're not going to be able to take all of it away. It's kind of like wishbone football. I can tell you from growing up in the wishbone, coaching against the wishbone, coaching in the wishbone at Colorado, defensive coordinators came to a kind of a general agreement. When you play the wishbone, stop the fullback. Stop that right there. And at least make it defining what the rest of the problems are. Well, the rest of the problems are what? The quarterback and the pitch. But for sure and certain, you cannot make a mistake by letting the fullback loose up the middle of your defense without ever getting hit. So, some of that kind of thinking, I would think, would be Steve Spagnuolo going into this game saying, we're going to take Barkley out of the game. And we're going to start there. And then whatever problems arise from that, we'll handle it with whatever's left. That would be my general comment on your question.
Coach Steve Logan coming up top of the hour, the Logan Zone. Last thing for you, Coach. I'm sure you coach with guys that coached in the Super Bowl. I'm sure there were players that you coached that played in the Super Bowl. Yeah. You had the bowl games where you had kind of an extended period off. So I guess that, that's probably as close to, the lead up, because that's a different animal, that whole lead up to the bowl. So if you're a coach, with all that given, and given that it is a business and these guys it's just their job, but how do you reconcile this week, and making sure you're prepared and that kind of thing, as a coach?
Well, the danger is adding too much, and you can do it at the NFL level, you can do it at the collegiate level. The NFL football player can absorb a lot of information, and you can put in a lot of offense, you can put in a lot of defense, but you can oversaturate an NFL football team. I've seen it done on a weekly basis. I've been involved. I was never a coordinator in the NFL, so I was, quote, taking orders and marching in tune with whoever the coordinator happened to be that I was working with. But I have been involved when behind my mask, and sometimes verbally, I would say, this is too much. We're way overboard here, and we're getting to the point where we're not going to be able to execute anything in a meaningful moment. And, that's the gold standard. Can you execute? I mean, coaches can put in a billion plays, but I always went back to, there's an axiom that says you don't put a play in, you work a play in. You've got to give that play repetitions on the field. You got to take it off the chalkboard, out of the classroom, onto the grass. And then you walk it through, then you have to go full speed with that football play. Then you've got to take that football play. How are you going to run it versus an even defense, an odd defense, a blitz defense, an overloaded defense? How are you going to throw this pass play against cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, brackets, cover 8? You see where I'm headed? One football play. It's a rabbit hole that the normal football fan could not, you can't even conceive the complexity of one football play and how long it takes to become an expert at it. So, there's the danger. You can oversaturate these guys, and, I know one thing, you better get off to some kind of a solid start. You don't have to score first in the Super Bowl or any game, but you need to go out there and get 2 or 3 first downs and act like you've got a sense of grounding so that you can move forward the rest of the football game. But, going out there and going 3 and out, or on the defensive side of the ball, you let a ball go over your head early in the game, or you do. I know you remember this, Patrick. Do you remember the Super Bowl where the very first play of the game, I know it was Peyton Manning. I believe it was the Denver Broncos. And Peyton Manning and the Broncos, to start the game, had the ball at the -5 yard line.
Yeah. And was that the Seattle one?
Shotgun snap went crazy. Very first play of the game. It was a disaster. And the score ended up 5-0 to nothing.
Yeah, that was Seattle. Yeah, we were just talking about that with Luke. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what was it oversaturation? What was it? What I don't know, but I know it was Peyton Manning. And that Super Bowl was over before halftime.
Yeah.
So that's what you want to do. You just praying to God that you haven't oversaturated things, get them off to a good solid start, and down the road you go. But I will be the first to tell you, you do have to install enough wrinkles to skew the statistics that you have built up on yourself over the year. You got to have a wrinkle. You got to have some diversity.
Yeah.
But it's the balance between diversity and confusion that's the real tap dance that's going on this week.
Coach, thank you for coming on and indulging me on the program here all year. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, and look forward to the show tonight.
Well, this show tonight, I'm going to launch into a leadership. How should I put it? We're going to go through some leadership issues because the Super Bowl has been diced and sliced to death. And I just didn't really want to bore anybody with that. So I think it'll be an interesting listen for the folks. We're going to go down and go through some leadership stuff, and I think it'll be fun.